I'm Chris.
I'm Scott.
We're Two Guys Brewing. We're down at our local brew store today with our friend Steve.
Kind enough to invite us down to his store.
And we're going to actually brew on his stove here in the store with all his equipment and show you some new stuff today, or some better stuff than what we normally use. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, a little different perspective. And
yeah, so more of a professional hobbyist as opposed to a amateur hobbyist.
Yeah, today we're going to be brewing an all-grain beer. We're doing a clone of, it's probably close to a clone of a beer called Lyne. It's produced by Goose Island. I don't know if I can say that or not, but it's a Goose Island beer clone. And the interesting aspect about this beer is, for a pale ale, it uses a single malt. In this case, we're using, instead of using traditional two-row brewer's malt, we're using pale ale malt. It's probably not extremely insignificant, but it's got a little bit higher roast, and it's got a little bit grainier flavor than the actual two-row brewer's malt.
And we're actually going to do a 10-gallon batch today and split it with Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do this one at home and you're doing a 5-gallon batch, remember to cut all your ingredients in half. But we start out with 25 pounds of that. Oh, you're going to make me read? I don't have my glasses.
Phil's malt.
We started out with 25 pounds of that pale ale malt, and we got ounce and a half of Liberty.
It goes in for 30
at
minutes.
30 minutes.
Half an ounce at 20 minutes. We're going to use, I want to double check, 1 ounce of Simcoe's at 15 minutes, 2 ounces of Centennial at the 10-minute mark, an ounce of Columbus at 5 minutes left in the boil, 2 ounces of Amarillo Gold at the knockout or steeping malt, 1 minute or knockout. And this one is pitched with a Safe Ale US-05 yeast, or you could use the California Ale yeast or any clean fermenting yeast. And one of the alterations I've already made to this recipe is I like to dry hop. I use about 1 ounce of whatever your favorite dry hop is. We've done Mosaic, we've done Centennial. You could probably go with the Columbus or the Amarillo or the Simcoe, Cascades, whatever you prefer for a dry hop. It just brought out a little bit more aroma and a little bit, I think it enhanced the flavors of those finishing hops.
And there's a lot of hops in here. Most of it's going to be used for floral and aroma flavorings. You're going to get some bittering because even that Liberty is going in at 30 minutes, so you're definitely going to get some bittering out of it, but not as much as if you put it in at 60 minutes.
We're basing this on a brew house efficiency of 72%. Yeah, and
we're shooting for an OG of around
34.5 IBUs. This one works out to about 34.5.
34.5, and then the OG on the wort should be about 57, 58. 58 according to those.
Hopefully our efficiency is a little higher, a little stronger.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep. And we're looking for an FG of around 12.
Mm-hmm. This beer does dry out pretty well. You can tell with the taste of it.
This is going to be a single infusion malt, single infusion mash. So you'll see that with the setup we're using, you can do a multi-step mash on this, but it's easier to. This is a really easy method to do a single infusion.
Yes, you will.
I like that. Did you buy those stickers separate?
Actually, John Strait put those together for me and put a little bit of. He put them on with epoxy.
Epoxy here. See. And now a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Steve Spears. I'm the owner of Dunkirk Homebrew. We are a local homebrew shop here in the Dunkirk, Fredonia area, located at 3375 East Main Road, Dunkirk, New York. We are a full line supplier of beer and wine brewing equipment and supplies. Come on down. Most of my customers become my friends. Thank you. This Lyne ale calls for just 25 pounds of this malt now. 25 pounds. I've got here is my false bottom from my mash tun. Been sitting outside. We got a little ice on there, but we'll take care of that in a minute. This is made out of Lexan. I think this thing's about 10 years old or more. I've had the store 9. I bet you it's 10 to 12 years old. But I drilled 1,353 holes in this thing. It took me about, then I had to scrape the paper off. It took about 2 days to take the paper off. But it served me well as a mash tun, and I get good efficiencies using it.
That goes in the bottom, the false bottom. It goes
This is the manifold. Yeah, it's going to sit in the bottom of the mash tun. We'll bring that in once it's warmed up.
Right, and that keeps when you're after you're done mashing, when you put your grains in there in the mash tun, or while you're mashing
I don't know if we
actually.
can get close enough and see all these holes.
That prevents the grains from seeping through and allows the wort to flow. This here is Steve's mash tun. Basically, it's just a cooler similar to the one I use, except that if you look right here, he's very ingenious and put this little valve on there, which makes things a lot easier. When you can see how the false bottom fits in there. Your mash tun, and that keeps everything from getting all gummed up. It helps prevent a stuck sparge. You can see here for the mash, we're just heating the water up. Got 3 small pots. Oh, small's a relative term. 3 small pots on the stove heating up.
What we have going on? Yeah, what we're doing, we're shooting for what we call a mash temperature, a mash of 152 degrees. And with the vessel, this is a Rubbermaid or Coleman cooler. It has a thermal mass units of 0.3 or 0.33, and I've got a program on ProMash that figures that in very well. And so I plug that in. I plug in the number of pounds of grain I have, the ratio of grain I have to water, which in this case is going to work out to about 1.4. I normally work with between 1.25, 1.2 to 1.33. So I'm going to do a little thinner mash today, only because I planned poorly on the water, but it's not going to affect our mash temps. Anywhere up to 1.5 quite often people will run with the mash.
He's talking about 1.5 quarts of water per pound of grain.
Right. And I've done, as you can see, I've done about 9 gallons of water here. You can do the math on that. I've already done it with ProMash though.
And was it how many? 25 pounds of grain.
And it stated that in ProMash tells me I have to heat this water to 174 degrees, which is what this water is right now according to my thermometer.
And we did put some warm water into the cooler to kind of warm it up ahead of time, so we don't lose too much. We don't want to lose too much heat.
You want to grab that grain out of the back room?
Sure.
To the we don't want to lose too much heat to the from the water to the cooler, so that's why we preheated the cooler.
There's enough in there. You can start sprinkling some of that grain already in there if it's over the top of that manifold.
It is.
Okay. And I'll yell at you when I've got hot stuff coming through.
And what happens is when you mix, the grain is at room temperature and the water's at 174 degrees. Once you mix that quantity of grain with that amount of volume of liquid, the temperature of the liquid drops. And that's the calculator Steve is talking about using.
Yes, and it takes in all those considerations. He just mentioned grain temps, temperature of the mash tun, temperature of the water, thermal mass of the mash tun.
This is what you call your strike temperature is
174.
174 is the strike.
Mash temperature is 152.
Right, so don't get those terms confused.
And we'll probably mash for an hour?
Yes.
Yeah. Now when I do this, at this point I actually mash right on the stove, and I can keep an eye on the temperature as I'm going. I can turn it up and down as I need to.
That's how I do it.
But this method, you have to have the water at the right temperature when you start, and because there's no adjusting it once it's into the cooler, unless you add more water.
Yeah, you can add a little hot water, a little
You can
cold
adjust it
water.
a little bit.
Right, but you can't put heat on it. You can add a little more
Not
hot.
with this particular cooler. Unless I could mount a brew heater in there.
Brew heater? What's
Yeah.
that? Is that?
That's on the shelf there on the
Yeah, that-
on the
Oh, that thing right there.
Yeah.
A brew heater.
Have you ever used one?
That's
I haven't.
Where am I at? There we are. I can see it.
Not even.
Brew heater, and that'll go right in your mash
Hot
tun.
stuff coming through.
Okay. One nice thing about brewing in a brew store is if you talk about a piece of equipment, you can actually demonstrate it without going, well, we'll show you that sometime in the future. And this is a mash paddle.
What we're doing here, we got stir this grain in. We want to make sure that we get the grain soaking and covered with the water, obviously, and we want to try to avoid clumping. I stir. I have a technique I use that works for me, and I stir up from the bottom underneath. If you see, I'm working under the grain.
I'm liking that, actually.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work so good in my, because I just use it in a kettle and
Right.
it all sits on top.
I tell people
I
to stir
dumped
from
it
the
in,
bottom.
so-
Sometimes they don't really understand what I mean, but
Yeah, I suppose if I went slower and didn't dump all my grain in at once, I could probably do a better job.
here we're looking at it. I don't know if you can get a close up on that, but
Nah.
we're creeping. And that looks like 152 to me, and it seems to be holding pretty good. That temp might be a little over.
With the mash temperature, I mean, in theory, you can get up almost to 160 and not destroy the enzymes, but it may change the flavor of the beer you're shooting for.
It may change the mouthfeel more than anything else, and perceived flavors could be, yeah.
It gets thicker and sweeter as the temperature goes up.
Yeah. That has to do with something called limiting chains. The amylase enzymes work on better at lower temperatures. And they chew off chains from our starch and protein chains, 2 bites basically two molecules at a time. They break them. They go in and chomp and convert, and chomp and convert. Where the beta glucans, I think they're called, they split the chains in the middle, and then they keep on trying to split them in the middle. Well, sometimes when they're splitting them in the middle, they leave uneven chains. And they also, at higher temperatures, the enzymes force the grains to create chains that branch, more branching chains. And even at the higher temperatures where the betas are working, the little ones, the alpha enzymes, or alpha amylase enzymes are working also, doing their chewing, but they get to a place where there's a limiting chain. Picture something like this, and they get down here and they're chewing, bite, chewing, bite, chewing, bite. Well, they can't get in here to chew. They can't get past this because of this limiting chain. And they're coming in this way, attacking it. And you got a picture, they're going off this way up here too. So they create these limiting factors, and these create mouthfeel in the beer because they can't get past that. That's a bigger chunk of starch that can't be converted now, and it causes the mouthfeel of the beer to increase. So it's recommended if you're doing beers where you want higher mouthfeel, do higher mash temperatures and lower mash times. Cut your mash times a half hour to 40 minutes because the other enzymes don't have a chance to work on those limiting chains as long.
Nice. Now, don't you wish you paid attention in high school chemistry and biology?
I took actually a beer 101 class out to the Geneva.
I was just taking a class online through Oklahoma University is offered a free chemistry of beer.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
but it's like a 400 level chemistry class, college level class, and I just did not have the organic chemistry background to understand a lot of what you just talked about. I mean, I understood it in that terms. That's about as far as I can get those. Keep it in layman's terms, I get it.
This guy that taught the course out there used to be the head brewmaster at Stroh's or something. The head, quality control guy or something. And he knew his stuff.
But so at different temperatures, you have different enzymes acting on your starches, and that's affects the fermentability of your wort.
We seem to be holding at 154. Where's our lid?
Right here. And it's actually still pretty chilly.
That's okay.
So,
That shouldn't affect us too much.
doesn't matter. One way.
It doesn't matter if it's one way. Here we go. And then I take one of these gloves and throw it over that hole.
What is that hole on the top for?
I actually had that set up so I could do automatic sparging if I wanted to.
Okay.
I could put a piece of PVC pipe in there with holes cut in it and run water off of the thing down in through it with a siphon, and
Now you can check your temperature.
So, all right. So when do we start counting now then?
Yeah.
Okay, we're right around
1
one. Right around
yeah.
1. So we got about an hour.
12:55.
This is way early for us to be brewing. Usually we.
I like to brew at this time, actually.
Well, Scott gets up at
They're
4.
starting at 9 o'clock at
I
night,
usually
right?
wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And,
I'm usually up by 10, 11. You know, I've had my third cup of coffee and ate my breakfast by noon or 1. You know, and I'm not ready to brew that early. I can still taste the
pick me up
toothpaste.
You know, I need about maybe 25 to 35 minutes to heat up the 3 gallons of water to approximately 175 degrees, 180 degrees. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to take a pitcher, and I'm going to pitcher some water out of one of these and put it into the other two, increase their volumes by lowering the other volume, and try to bring one up to boiling. That way I can add the boiling water to my mash tun and raise my grain bed temperatures a little bit before I start my mash out.
Okay, well actually, why are you raising the grain temperatures? Let's start there.
My philosophy on that is the higher the grain temperatures without overdoing it means you've loosened up your sugars a little more and made them more dissolvable, and hopefully increasing your mash efficiency. You don't want to go too much past 185 degrees with the whole grain bed. At that point, according to what I've read, you'll start extracting tannins from the grain husks, which can institute or make the beer taste a little more bitter than, and it's not a hop bitterness. It's a grainy type bitterness that's not very appealing.
Okay. And all right, can kind of go through the process that you're going to do here. You said you put 9 gallons of water in the...
Right now we've used 9 gallons, which worked out to about 1.41 or 42 quarts of water per pound of grain. I'm heating up, that's about a gallon extra than I normally use. And then normally what I like to do is I like to use as much sparge, I like to heat up as much sparge water as I'm going to want for my final batch, which is in this case is 10 gallons of beer. Actually I shoot for about 10 and a half, 11. Because I want to have room for trub to settle out in my batches, and I like to have a full 5 gallons to put into bottles or kegs. But so I'm heating up 9 gallons because I've got the extra gallon in my my mash already. I'm going to heat up 9 gallons of water today. That'll compensate for that extra gallon or that I put in the mash tun. And we'll just be. I do a fly sparge. I don't know. There's different types of sparge. There's fly sparging, there's batch sparging, there's brew in a bag. Fly sparging probably is the most efficient extraction-wise, time-wise, brew in a bag. The middle ground is your batch sparging, which is it decreases your efficiency by 5 or 6 points, so you have to increase your grain bill a little bit to make up for that efficiency difference. I like to do mine with as minimal amount of grain as I possibly can. But I'll do a Vorloff to clear my wort, and then I will start my sparge. And I like to do it hands-on. I can set this up so it's fairly automatic. Make some adjustments on flow rates coming off of a cooler that I can set up here into my mash tun and have it go. I've got another rod of PVC pipe that I've made with holes drilled in it that'll trickle the water down on top of it. But I find when I do that I make mistakes. I forget things. I forget steps, or I don't pay quite as close attention to what I'm doing. So I've just gone to this little bit more labor-intensive part where I actually get a colander and a pitcher and I scoop water out and I pour it through the colander to rain down onto my grain bed, and it keeps me involved with the whole process all the way.
All right, so we're looking for about 10 gallons or 10 and a half gallons beer.
we're going to collect
wort.
10 gallons for a boil.
So we're at 9. We're actually at 18 here. So do the math for us.
My batches of beer are usually figured in on Beersmith or Pro Mash at 11 gallons for a 10-gallon batch. I just plug in 11. That's how much wort I'd like to pull off. I know if I get down to like 10 and a half, 10 and 3/4, I've got enough to get my 5 gallons, or real close to my 5 gallons of beer that I'm after when I'm finished with fermentation.
So okay, do the math for us. So we got 18 gallons of water here.
Right, 18 gallons of water. We're going to probably lose 2.5 to 3 gallons in the mash itself with 25 pounds of grain. So we'll have runoff for approximately 14 or 15 gallons. I've got a very, very large open pot, and so we'll boil off more than
gallons.
Yeah, we'll boil off a couple gallons during that process.
So we'll probably get down to about 11.
And we'll get down to about 11.
And then you're gonna, you know, you
And that's
split
what
it
we want.
between
Then we'll
two,
show
so
the
you got
11
5 and a
gallons.
half.
Yeah.
We'll have some trube left in the bottom of the pot that we don't want. If we can try to keep it out of our bucket, we do, obviously.
We've talked about, Scott and I have talked about, you know, keeping the trube off and what it is, but, you know, why don't we give us your perspective on what that gunk in the bottom of the pot is?
Trube is hop residue. It's when you're boiling worts, you know the heat causes binding of residual proteins that aren't broken down in the mash, and they have a tendency to. You'll see it. Hopefully, we'll see some of that when we get the boil going here with a nice yellow wort like we have this here today. We should be able to see some of the protein separation that's taking place, and with certain, depending on the types of malt you have, it actually works in different ways. Some of it is more like egg drop soup. I've had some of it clump up in really big clumps.
That's what some people call hot break, right?
It's hot break,
Yeah.
yes. At that, and usually it starts occurring just before you add your hops, but it seems to progress a little faster with the hops. I think the acids help with the formation of things, the alpha acids and those types of things help with that hot break formation.
You see, I know I usually use pellet hops, and I dump them right into my boil and stir away, so they all dissolve into a goopy mess.
Yes.
And then you got your hot break,
Right.
and you cool it. And,
All that stuff. And then you got it. Then at cooling temperatures, the more rapid you cool, a greater amount of cold break takes place. And these are other starches that start coming out in the wort, and they get clumped together and they settle out to the bottom of your wort also. And you try to keep those out of your fermentation because they'll start degrading again and working themselves back into your beer. And they could lend some off flavors, unwanted off flavors, things like that. I think a lot has to do with it. It affects the appearance of your beer.
yeah.
You know, it's what happens generally as home brewers, we don't care. You know, it can be cloudy as long as it tastes good. You know, that's the big thing for us.
You start entering competitions
but
and
you start
stuff.
entering competitions, and the clarity of your beer gets judged, the flavors, the aromas, and everything else. And you want to try to remove those things that shouldn't be part of your beer. And the best place to do that is the boil at the first racking from primary to secondary. You just want to be careful with those processes.
Now,
Every chance you get, you want to make
do you use a secondary? Do you rack into a secondary
I
personally?
tend to rack to a secondary. I use glass carboys now. There are times certain beers that I won't. I mean, there's dark like stouts and porters. I'm not too worried about them going into secondary. Most of my pale ales, lagers, definitely go into a secondary because what I'll do is do that. Raise the temperatures up 3 to 5 degrees, which is the diacetyl rest in lagers, and then I'll rack off of that after that diacetyl rest has taken place, cool the beer back down in a rack, and then put it in secondary so it can drop out and clear. And I've had beers, they're absolutely crystal clear and beautiful.
So is it more to do
before
with
they go in
appearance
kegs.
or flavor or both?
I think both. I think there's a little bit of both that goes on. Well, you know, because it's like everything else. Your senses have a tendency to affect how you perceive a beer. And if it looks good, if it smells good, you perceive it as tasting good. You know, if it looks cloudy,
A lot of crap
you know,
floating around
and
in
it smells good. Well,
You
that's
don't think
you
it
know,
tastes as good.
it may not. It may
It may
affect,
not, yeah.
and it may affect the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
You know, that those yeast cells and protein coagulations, things like that, and chill haze can affect your mouthfeel of beer. So.
Or even little, hot debris. Or
So I'm going to take this one. We're going to shut it off. Okay. Adding some near boiling or boiling water into here. And you see it brings up our volume quite a bit. Should be raising our bed of grain temps quite a bit. And I stir that around just to mix that in good and distribute the heat a little bit around there. Hopefully.
That's definitely a different mash paddle than I use. I use a big old wooden spoon.
I don't have a wooden one. I've got stainless steel. I've got my stainless steel mash paddle up there.
That's a real
Actually,
mash
over
paddle there.
I've got another mash paddle here in the corner here that could be used. See? It's actually truly a mash paddle, something made for me.
Yeah, this one almost looks like an oar
Yeah.
over here. All right, we're gonna pull the first bit off.
What I
It's
do
gonna
is
be
I
full
run,
of scrunch and stuff.
yeah, it should have grain particles. You can always see this, already see this is going to be a light beer, light colored beer.
See how nice that shut-off valve is there? That's a lot easier to use than what I've got.
And I sprinkle it back on just to create channeling.
Nice German word for this process. It's called Vorlauf.
Orloff, yep.
Of course, all German words are nice.
Sure, Herr Schaefer. And I probably go a lot longer than I need to with some of this stuff, but they usually say it takes about maybe 3 or 4 quarts. Depends on your, actually a lot of it depends on your manifold, your false bottom, whatever you're using.
What your grinder's set at. Could be
Yeah.
lots of different factors.
But I like to go until my particulates are down. I like to see the wort start shining a little bit, or the liquor. At this point, it's liquor.
And the less grain particles that you get into your wort, the better. The less that has to settle out, less it can
Yeah, that's
give
what
you the tannins and stuff that we were talking about. You don't want to get the tannin, you don't want to leach tannins out of the grains if you can avoid it.
what this process does. It basically turns the grain into a filter itself.
Yes.
Yes.
And something you do have to be careful of is a couple of things. One is getting channels where the grain separates and the liquor just pours right through between without filtering through the grains.
That can affect your efficiency in a negative
lot.
way.
And
If you
the other
should
thing is getting
If we see, I don't know if I have too close here, but I don't know if you
See
can
if I
see
can
in
get
there,
a-
but there's
Yeah,
some chunks still floating in the bottom. If you look toward the bottom especially, I see some chunks floating around in there. And we're trying to...
And if you get the other end of things is you get a stuck sparge, where the filter pack's too tight, and then the liquor doesn't want to filter through at all, or very, very slowly. And those are both bad things. I probably should talk about how to avoid those. Huh?
Well,
Don't do this.
a proper crush will help avoid the stuck sparge, because the grain, if you're keeping your grain husks intact, they act nicely as a filter bed. If you get too fine of a sparge, you can always substitute and use some rice hulls. Put that in your,
or if you're,
maybe half a
using
pound.
a lot of wheat.
Right.
Right.
Or rye or different.
Wheat or rye, the smaller grains that don't have husks, rice hulls is a good idea. Depending on
And they don't affect the flavor. Of
No,
course, they don't work with the
Actually, I
German
think they-
purity laws,
No,
the Munich purity
but I think
laws.
they do add some nutrient to the wort that's beneficial, actually.
Is that right? Would they put you be in violation of the purity laws, huh?
Well, is it barley? is it
You can
yeast?
see
Is
now,
it hops? Is it
I'm
water?
looking here, and I can tell now that the wort is starting to get to the point where I can see through it as it's pouring. Before it was a cloud coming out of
It's
there,
definitely clearing.
and it's
right
clearing up very nicely.
up. We've done. This is about 6, 7.
Well, we've done maybe about 3 or 4 gallons already.
Probably just talking how many of those little pitchers there.
Yeah. What I see coming out of here now is what I expect the beer to be looking like. We run this in here. And remember I mentioned how I like to get my wort looking kind of shiny. You can tell now it's getting kind of shiny. It looks like a beer
Right,
in the
right
pitcher.
There's not a lot of stuff floating in there.
No, not
So you're-
now.
that means that
There
you're-
is, but see, this is the stuff that comes out. This is the proteins and stuff that are left in there, aren't degraded, and they'll come out as hot break and cold break later. Now the big boys, they would be taking their pre-boil wort reading or gravity readings now. And we could do that, I guess. Okay, we're done with that. We'll set it here for now.
And if you're doing a pre-boil gravity reading, that's just giving you one more point where you can determine.
And make some adjustments if you need to.
Yeah, or you can also determine your efficiencies, because every step in the process is a place for you to lose efficiency. And So the more measurements you take, the more likely you are to find where your problems
Do a
are.
fairly slow runoff now. We don't want to open it up all the way. This process should take about 45 minutes to an hour.
To drain that.
Yep.
To drain that, or for all of them?
Yeah.
And add the additional water.
Draining and sparging.
Yeah.
So the whole thing should take about 45 minutes. Yeah, and you can see we're filling really slow. That valve is only open, not maybe a quarter.
Wrong door.
And that's another reason why you might want to seek out your local brew club. Is like our brew club
This pod actually belongs to the North Chautauqua home brewers. Is it North Chautauqua or Northern
Northern Chautauqua, I guess it is.
You know, I've been with that club for 15
You
years.
were the president and everything at one point.
But anyways, at some point we have purchased a nice propane burner. We have some tanks available. The club bought a nice supposed 15-gallon pot, turned out to be 14 gallons.
Yeah.
But it's still highly functional.
And as a club member, you can borrow the club equipment as long as you take care of it.
Take it home, brew with it, bring it back.
If you bring it back dirty, though,
The club also has a counter pressure filler available too. If anybody wanted to had kegged beer that they want to bottle up beers with, they could use the counter pressure filler.
Which is something we might get around to if we ever want to enter a beer into a competition or
So,
something and have to pull
I'm
out.
going to talk about some of these things that are sticking on the side of this brew kettle here. Just what do we got here?
Well, we have a polar brewmometer here. It's going to let us know It's going to let us know when we're coming to a boil. Most importantly, it's going to help us out when it's time to chill the wort down. Know that it's ready to be put into the buckets or primary fermenters, and the temperatures are low enough to do our yeast. We have the brand new check valve or ball valve that I put on here a couple weeks ago. The other one had split out on the side and was leaking, probably from the heat, maybe mishandling a little bit. It does have looks like a brass elbow and a brass.
And that's nice because it'll leave the trub in the bottom of the kettle.
Right. It's
You can see that
it's low enough. Yeah, it's low enough that the trub stays low.
It's not right on the bottom. It's quarter inch, half inch up.
Some.
Yeah, but you're going to leave the majority of it in there.
And later on, we'll pull out the wort chiller, get that ready. I've got a 50-foot coil we use, so we can quickly cool our wort. Key things now.
Nothing special in there, just a brew kettle.
Yep. Key things now. Make sure the valve is closed. And this is my sparging technique here. I'm just gonna. And we can take our time with this one. We just don't want the water getting below the top of our grain bed.
Now, as opposed to this is like the fly sparging you're calling it. If we were
This is
batch
fly
sparging, we'd let that
We would
that
just
water
open it up and let it run.
and we'd let all of it drain out, and then
Yep.
we'd add.
I've collected. I try to keep track of how much wort I'm collecting, and right now I've got 3 gallons of wort here. And so I'm going to add it to my brew kettle. Just lets me know how much I'm collecting. And this is something they try not to splash too much, they say.
Yeah, this is not the place where you want to add oxygen. Want me to hold that up for you?
Please. That one's in one hole now. Okay, so we're 11 gallons.
Of course, I can't see the viewfinder, so I don't know. With this, are we going to boil for an hour?
Yeah.
So even though the hops are only going in for 30 minutes?
Right.
So now, what would be why would you do a full 60-minute boil if you don't need it for the hops?
Still got it. You do your conversions for hot break, stuff like that.
Okay.
Still doing a full boil. Just you add them in 30, and you got it. It helps with the conversion. It just clarifies the wort better. It gets rid of impurities in the beer.
But in theory, if you were in a hurry, you could go with a shorter boil. You're going to still get your hops.
Yep, and but then again, you might find yourself with beer with a big chill haze later on.
I have definitely seen recipes that do a 30 or 45, but there's a lot of 90-minute
Not all
boils.
minute. You've seen all grain?
90-minute boils for caramelization purposes usually.
This is definitely one of the best porters. This smoked porter you make. I'm not a huge porter fan or a huge stout fan, but the really super smoky porters.
Right.
But this is good.
That one we had at the meeting down there in Silver Creek.
Yeah.
That one was a little over the top.
Yeah, well, that was with the grains that he made out
Yeah.
of his own homemade grains. But
that was
Which John gave me a little pail full of raw barley, and I actually did malt.
this is pretty good.
Like a handful of it.
that's got it.
We're actually going to throw a little bit of gypsum in this pot. Personally, our water is such that I generally don't feel the need, but Steve's playing today. Do you normally put gypsum in your water?
I try to remember when I'm doing a pale ale.
Basically, that hardens up the water a little bit, puts some more minerals in there.
And it makes, what it does is the sulfur, what I understand, the sulfur ions help to make the hops crisper. So they pop a little more, so they're not so flat.
So maybe
Keep it from being rounded.
So there's sulfur ions in the gypsum you just added.
Yes.
now once you get into brewing and you're doing it on a regular basis, if your water is a little off, a little soft, or a little rotten egg tasting, or whatever, or if you're running through a water filter, a softener, you might want to get it tested, find out where it is. I mean, usually, I know around here you can just take it up to the county, they'll test it for you, give you a report. I mean, you got to pay a few bucks for it, and then you know where your water's at, you know what your water chemistry is, and you can make adjustments if you need to, or for different styles of beer. A lot of people get into water chemistry. It's complicated, and not something for beginners. But again, that's just going to give you a better product. Everything that you take into account when you're brewing, and every variable that you control gives you a different, better outcome. It gives you the opportunity to brew a better beer. And water chemistry. For the beginner, water chemistry is probably the last thing you need to worry about.
I would say if you haven't got your fermentation temperatures under control, then don't worry about your water chemistry.
Right,
There's
right.
bigger fish to
It's
fry.
big, but once you get into lagering and you're controlling that, you're controlling your times and you're mashing your own. At that point, you may want to start thinking about water chemistry.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. But short and simple, gypsum is a great thing to throw into beer. Unless you've got extremely hard water, it's not going to hurt. If you're on city water, gypsum's a great thing.
Okay, first hop addition, 30 minutes into the boil now. Calls for 1.5 ounces of Liberty. There's an ounce. There's a half an ounce. I quite often will put these in a hop sock, add them to the wort. Just it helps with the clarification process. It leaves me less trube at the bottom. I can pull them out later. Okay, now according to our brew schedule, at the 20-minute mark, we're supposed to add another 1/2 ounce of Liberty. That's there. Okay, at the 15-minute mark, it calls for an addition of 1 ounce of Simcoe. In they go. And at this time we also add, I've made up 2 teaspoons of Irish moss. I've put it in the water here to rehydrate a bit, and that's going to get added to our beer now at this time too. The Irish moss is a clarifying agent, and it should assist in keeping like chill haze and things like that down in my beer. At the 10-minute mark, we have Centennials, 2 ounces.
Better for me.
5-minute mark, we added 1 ounce of Columbus. And the last addition of hops is a knockout hop, or just an aroma hop. Amarillo calls for 2 ounces. And it says at 1 minute on there. I figure 1 minute to 0 minutes, somewhere in there. We'll spread them out. Not that it's going to make that big of a difference. We were at 64, aren't we?
Yeah, we're pretty close.
We could probably start running. Shut the water off. Or we keep it running while we do this. Let's slide this forward. I think I can get it.
Flip this around so you can see.
Good.
Okay, our OG on this is 60, so and that's actually a little better than we were hoping.
Okay. Not bad at all. Okay, let me slide this out of your way.
And, I've had a couple of infections lately, which really bothers me, so I'm actually breaking my own rule here, and I used some bleach to clean this carboy out. But if you haven't, episode 7, which was the last episode, we did have a little infection, or something that looked like an infection. So I got something somewhere in my house that's a problem. So I cleaned this extra good with bleach today and rinsed it 6 times. And crossing our fingers. If it tastes like Band-Aids, we'll know why. It shouldn't. There should be no infection.
I'm pitching a US-05 yeast on it, as we mentioned earlier, for this recipe. Quite often the directions will say to rehydrate the yeast. I've had good luck with it just pitching straight into the carboy, so that's what I've done today.
You used a US-05 on that.
Yeah.
What would be something somewhat equivalent to that, or which is
Nottingham would be clean.
Nottingham would be a good one. All right. All right, Steve. Thanks for having us. We
you're welcome.
appreciate the brewing
Yep,
stuff
yep.
tonight.
Yeah.
And we'll be back to buy stuff. We buy a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, they do.
All right. Have a good night, folks.
Just to keep those shows running. Here at Dunkirk Homebrew, we offer a wide selection. Our malt extracts are Breese liquid, Munton's liquids, Breese dry malt extracts, Brewer's Best beer ingredient kits, and we carry a full line of grains from Vnder, German malt, Dingemans, Munton's, Breese, a full line of specialty grains, special B, flake rice, white wheat, you name it, we've got it. And we will crush it for you, no charge.
You brought some of your green line, right?
I did.
Okay, great.
However, not the one that was dry on. I looked high and low. I think I maybe shared too much of that. I couldn't find one, but I had a remaining bottle from the very first batch that we ever did.
Okay. All right. So that's going to be a little different. I need a couple of these then.
So
this is
this has been in the bottle. I think we made the first batch of this like last September.
so this is what, 8, 9 months old then? 10 months.
It's been in the bottle for I don't know. It's first like 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah.
The Green Line's not a beer that should really improve with age.
No.
It's not, yeah.
No, it's not. It's
Right.
not meant to store or age particularly. No, but that's when we made this.
This
and
is
that's
similar
all.
to our episode 8. So we're
I'm
gonna,
sure it's still fine. It didn't go bad or
It should be.
anything.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
all right. So this is Green Line. Unfortunately, this is not the other half that we did with Steve. Originally, Steve was taking half, and then he swapped half of his with Mike, and Mike had it, and it was dry hopped, and this is not that beer. This is the original beer.
The very first recipe we made. And when we made this one, Steve and I split it, and he dry hopped his, so I did not. The recipe didn't call for it. And I liked his better. I liked it with the dry hops.
The ones I've had with the dry hop, I so far have liked better than than mine without. So I'm thinking that the dry hopping is definitely something. Now, what do you remember what yeast was used in this?
I believe it was US-05.
US-05. Okay, so that's going to be different between yours and ours. Yeah, we used Noddy, I think.
Did
in
you use
ours.
Nottingham in it?
So we used the Nottingham in ours.
Very similar though.
All right, you ready?
Sure. Alright, so for aroma, I got not much smell. I can taste the malt flavor, which I like. Need a little more hops, it's missing some of the hops that I expect. I got a 6 out of 12 there. For the appearance, it's foamy, but it's clear. It has good carbonation, so it gets 2 out of 3. Flavor, I gave it an 18 out of 20. I think it tastes okay, except it needs a little more hops. It's probably a little generous. Other than that, there's nothing wrong with it. Mouthfeel, again, it's fine. It's about what it's got 5 out of 5. And the overall impression is 8 out of 10, which brings it up to 39 out of 50. Yeah, I'm overly generous.
This is extremely weird because you always
on
are more.
on a different night, I'd be giving them 15s and stuff.
Yeah, because I always am higher than Scott. I think Scott's been higher than me once, and then he really. Oh wait, I added wrong. So I went back and fixed it. All right, so on aroma, I give it an 8 out of 12. I think it still has a slight sour smell. Not bad. It's not, not a bad flavor. It's just a slight sour smell, which I didn't expect. It's got a clear, nice head, great head, good color. I gave it a 3 out of 3 there. Flavor, a little bit on the sweet side, I thought, and I think that's just from not being dry hopped. It could be a little more of the floral flavor, a little bitter, more bitter. 15 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel, the only complaint there is I think it could use a little more body. It was a little bit light. I give it a 4 out of 5. And overall impression, I give it a 6 out of 10. So 36 out of 50.
Yeah, we're pretty close. I gave it the lowest score of all.
Somebody's got to be lowest.
6 out of 12 for aroma. It's a malt, not much hops in the aroma. It's not bad. And it is nice and clean.
Yeah.
At least
The appearance is
the
good.
first ones were. This is the bottom of the bottle. So I gave appearance 2 out of 3 because that big huge rock. There's just too much head. So I don't complain for that. 6 for aroma, 2 for appearance. Flavor, I gave it a 15 out of 20, and that's probably a little generous. It should probably be more like a 10. More hops would be good, but it has a good balance. I like this stuff. There's certain times when I drink this beer, and it just seems right. And not much different from this. So I give it a 15. Like I said, a little generous. Like for mouthfeel, I give it a 5. Again, it fits my mouth just fine. So. And I gave it a 6 as overall impression. Like I said, it's a drinker. And it's not a wonderful beer. And it's 34 overall.
Yeah. The ones I've had that were dry hopped, definitely next time I do this, I'm dry hopping.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
no two ways about it.
No doubt about it.
I wasn't impressed. I mean, it was okay beer, but
Didn't really fizz, no.
it's not something that I like to pay the premium price for. It was just okay beer.
Which one was this?
I like a lot of Saranac beers better. It was Southern Tier Farmhouse IPA or something, I think.
Well, it's definitely a little maltier. Ooh, yeah.
Yours is a little lighter in color, so maybe there's that Pilsner malt in there, huh? Just a little lighter, don't you think? Or not? It smells very much the same, doesn't it?
It does smell exactly the same.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It does not taste the same, though.
No, it's not as good.
This tastes like this is kind of Kolsch-like or Pilsner-like?
It's a little maltier. It's got a little, yeah, Kolsch. And really, the big difference is, other than the age, is I think the yeast. I think the night.
I like this.
Go in the same order again?
Okay. Well,
Scott just read numbers.
I got no comments on any of this stuff. But yeah, so for aroma, I gave it a 6 out of 12.
Smelled half good.
It smelled half good. It smells all right. So we got a 3 for 3 on appearance, 17 out of 20 for flavor, mouthfeel's 5 out of 5, and overall impression 8 out of 10. Overall score 39.
Nice. Welcome. All right. On aroma, I gave it an 8 out of 12. I pretty much figured this to me smelled exactly like the other green Lyne we tasted tonight. Appearance, again, a 3 out of 3. It was clear, nice head retention, color was appropriate. Nothing to ding it on there. The big difference, I thought, was the flavor. This, to me, tasted a little maltier than the other one, and I didn't get a point there, so I gave it a 14 out of 20. I liked
Mike's a little better. It wasn't quite as malty. It was a little cleaner, I thought, in that respect. Mouthfeel, 5 out of 5. It definitely hit all the marks for mouthfeel. I mean, it was, body was great, carbonation good, warmth, everything right where it should be. Overall impression, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. So we're at 31 on this one for me.
I didn't know what to say about rum. I gave it a 6. I think one of my nostrils isn't working, so 6 is as high as they can go. Appearance, 3 out of 3. It's clean, nice head retention, and good color. Nothing wrong with it. So, flavor, Pilsner Kolsch-like after the other one. In contrast, the difference. It had a little more hop flavor than mine had. It's kind of floral. Not hugely hoppy though.
No.
Had a good balance too. I looked for it. Pale ale. I like malt backbone. And I like the hops to stand up to it, but I do like a malty presence. Mm-hmm. And so, unlike you, I wouldn't ding it for being malty. I'd give it an extra 20. But anyway, I gave it 14 out of 20 for flavor. 5 out of 5 for mouthfeel. It felt good in my mouth. That's what I said. And 6 overall, 34.
Now wait a minute, one of us added wrong.
6 plus 3 is 9, plus 14 is
Probably
23, plus 5 is 28, plus 6 is 34.
I must have added wrong. Okay, let's see here.
You got 25, 30, 36.
Yeah, okay. Knew one of us added wrong. All right, I guess I like that one better. I might probably add it wrong in the last one too. I probably had a higher score than Scott again.
I cheated. I went back and looked at the other one.
All right, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers.